Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and warm greetings from Costa Rica. I want to welcome you all, independent of where you are in your time zone. Welcome to this masterclass on systems leadership and transformative leadership with Petra, Dr. Petra Kuenkel. We envision this session as an opportunity to explore the idea of systems leadership and the kind of literacy we need to contribute to social change, contribute in a more effective way. But when it comes to understanding and putting sustainability into practice, it is essential to have a systemic approach. And I would say would be seen as a prerequisite to understand and implement sustainable development. That prerequisite is to have a grasp or a basic systems literacy. When I do my courses here on education for sustainable development, certainly system thinking always come out as a key competence in education. So last year, we organized 30 masterclasses. It was the first year we launched the Earthchild International Masterclass program. We organized it in English, in Spanish, and Portuguese, as you know. And this year, we are organizing 10 masterclasses only in English. And this masterclass program is organized under our UNESCO chair umbrella. We have a UNESCO chair on education for sustainable development with the Earth Charter since 2012. And the purpose of that UNESCO chair is to work at that intersection between sustainability, values, and education. And with that, we have been organizing masterclasses, courses, and research work in that field of how to bring together sustainability, values, and education through a lens of transformative learning. And therefore, system thinking is certainly a key element in that work. So in this masterclass, we would be looking at questions such as how can we understand system thinking, fundamental properties of systems, and how to design and have a grasp of that to implement to the different contexts we have. We'll also look at what are the patterns of a system and how can this understanding help us in the process of transformative change. I think if you are here, it's because you are either interested in sustainability, in transformative change, and or in the Earth Charter. And who else could be a better person to come and give us guidance on this than Petra Kuenkel. I would like to welcome you all, and if you are independently of where you are, let me encourage you to write in the chat box a little bit about you, your name, where you are located, and or seeing a sunset. How do you feel when you are under the moon or seeing a sunset? How does that make you feel? And as you reflect on that, you can share just your name and where you are located, just to help us welcome you and see who is here. I want to welcome, I see Hanny Lund, who is here. She's joining us from Norway, university there. It's great. Let me see. And if you can open your camera too, I strongly encourage you to do so. Sara Pedeta, who is here from the Covila in Costa Rica. It's great. Deepika is here also from Leuphana University in Germany. So I just want to encourage you and welcome you to come and say hello and share in the chat box your name, where you are, and how does it make you feel when you are under the sun, under the moon, and just appreciating that. Hello, Camila from Brazil. Kate from Vietnam, hello. Kate, how do you feel when you see the moon from Vietnam? A full moon. Cindy from Thailand, thank you. Victor from Brazil. I welcome you, Siam from Portugal. And Beatriz from Brazil. Again, encouraging you to write in the chat box to introduce yourself. We want to really warmly welcome you and hear from you. How do you feel when you are under the moon, maybe the full moon? Hello, Yutsua from Okayama University in Japan. Thank you, Deepika. Seeing sun in North Germany is not as usual inside. So it always brings smile on face. Thank you, Deepika. That's great. Full of awe and connected. Thank you. Charles Hopkins, I'm happy you're here. Good. And good to see, let's see what Charles says about the sun. Love to see a full moon. How does it make you feel, Charles, when you are seeing the full moon? Hello, Alide. Welcome from the Netherlands. The sun is shining today in the Netherlands. That's beautiful. Closing the eyes and seeing the sun. Great. Akpezi is here with us also from Nigeria. What an honor to have you here. Thank you so much, Akpezi. Well, welcome everyone. I will keep insisting on getting you to think and reflect. How does it make you feel when you're under the moon, the full moon, and seeing the sunset? Now I'm going to introduce you to our speaker today. So that's Petra. As you know, I'm very grateful, Petra, for having you here. Petra is a member of the executive committee of the Club of Rome. So some of you may know, others may not know the Club of Rome, but the Club of Rome is certainly an iconic institution that started in 1972 with the launch of a major and historical publication on the limits to growth, and it continues to make a lot of noise in influencing social change. And I think it's very much at the heart of what we do here in the Earth Charter, which is turning conscience into action, right? Our slogan is turning conscience into action, and the core of the Earth Charter is to expand and deepen our consciousness with regards to how we ought to relate to one another in the large living world. So Petra is a member of the executive committee of the Club of Rome and a founder of the Collective Leadership Institute, a German and a South African-based social enterprise, which works in building collaboration, competency for transformative change. Petra is a reference in system thinking. She's a system scientist, a visionary, author. She has published many articles and books around these issues. And I have to say that my special connection with Petra actually came from Dominic Stucker and Douglas, who worked at the Earth Charter and then moved to work with her many, many years ago. And I have heard from Petra and the wonderful work they have been doing in the Collective Leadership Institute for many years from Germany. So welcome, Petra, and thank you for being here with us. Such a joy. Where are you?
Thank you. I am about 2 hours north of Berlin, so not too far away from Leuphana and Lüneburg, but in Mecklenburg. Those of you who know Germany a little bit, it's the former East.
Yes, East German. Thank you so much. Petra, what triggered you to engage in this work of system thinking, system leadership, and Collective Leadership Institute? I mean, when did you find, when it emerged, the idea of the Collective Leadership Institute?
It's quite interesting. It's probably going to be a 1.5 hour story. So I'm trying to cut it very short. I was working in management development. I was working in leadership development, and I was also working in basically in the International Development Corporation. And I couldn't really understand why people, always thought in silos and worked in silos. And that was in the 90s, like, okay, it's a while ago. But what specifically interested me is to see what are the elements, that the mind shift elements, that could help us not only officially cooperate, but really have a different attitude towards cooperation. And I think that was the initial idea. And then I had a lot of research into system science, looked at quantum physics. I'm talking about it just a little bit today. But then thought, no, this needs to be in practice. So I was very busy developing multi-stakeholder approach that it was basically upcoming, I think from the beginning 2000 years, kind of people went more and more into multi-stakeholder collaboration. And finally, not finally, but a good step was the goal number 17 in the Sustainable Development Goals that actually talks about partnerships. So I think it's much more on the agenda today. And I've been one of the pioneers, I think, of multi-stakeholder collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to hear more from you on multi-stakeholder collaboration, how to enhance our skills, our capacity to create and good collaboration, effective collaboration. So the floor is yours, Petra. And by the way, for those of you who are not used to our masterclasses, we normally have a masterclass of 2 hours. In the first hour, first 45 minutes, we are concentrated on what Petra has to share with us on the topic. And then afterwards, we open for question and answer. We have a little breakout room to have a further discussion, deeper discussion on what we have heard. So Petra, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm glad to be here. This is an exciting round of people, all from all over the world. And I hope I can make a little bit of a difference. Let's just kind of start with just 2 minutes about my background and about the Collective Leadership Institute, so that you know why I came up with a crazy idea, you could say, to found an institute with a name, Collective Leadership Institute, in Potsdam, Germany. This is not a German name. We were working internationally. And as Marianne said, we are an independent nonprofit organization working in many different countries, but we have basically locations in Germany, South Africa, and the US. And it's a while ago, and I've now handed over to the young people. So I'm not in the concrete management anymore, which is fantastic, but more busy, with conceptual development and things like that. So what is our mission? It's really about a collective stewardship approach to systems change. It is always about transformation, but it's also always very, very practical, because we believe that we need to bring in the science of collaboration or the science of systems change into practice and then really check if that works. And we also need to develop a theory out of the practice. So we have been doing both ways. So it's really about collaboration capacity, and I will talk about transformation literacy and what we mean with that in the context of systems change. So just as a bit of an idea, we have about 6,000 alumni in our courses, because the Institute has a mix between integrated capacity development in actual multi-stakeholder collaboration change, systems change processes, and in educational programs. So we have the biggest success if people we work with in collaborative change processes have actually undergone our training, because then they have a kind of different view on what it means to actually have a systematic, or not only a systemic, but also a systematic approach to change. And I'm just going to go into that a little bit further, but let's just start with the first question. So what I have developed, and that is in some of my books, and I will show the books a little bit later, is how an understanding of fundamental properties of systems aliveness can help us design and implement more effective change processes. And these days, everything is about change. There's also a lot of resistance to change. Those of you who are in politics, that it's a big job. It's particularly at the moment in Germany, it's not easy. But the issue is how can something that so deeply is embedded in life, that is aliveness, and all life works with systems. There's just nothing in life that is not contextual embedded in systems and subsystems, etc. How can understanding that help us design and implement change in a different way? And we need to a little bit go back to the worldview that looks like it's an outdated worldview, but we need to be staying aware that it's still the dominant worldview, despite our, let's say, big community of people around the world who think differently, but this is still the dominant worldview. So, and this worldview, the planet Earth is basically, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but a machine, like that can be extracted or that can be maybe also corrected, etc. And I don't want to criticize the idea of green economy or green growth, but we need to be aware that some of the elements of what is happening there is still trying to repair an old mindset. Yet how it is with people, we are all like, transformations take sometimes centuries, sometimes thousands of years. So it's going to be slow. So we're going to have in the next, I don't know, 10, 15, 100, maybe 500 years, we will have a merging of the existing dominant worldview, the planet Earth as a disenchanted machine, not spirited, and a worldview that is different. And if I just look at first of all, as at the distorted mindset, the machine mindset, we need to be aware that has been new in human history. Because if we look at 70,000 years of human development, then it is only about 5,000 to 6,000 years that slowly humankind moved into the machine mindset. And only in the last couple of hundred years, that was like, including patriarchy, including industrialization, that was like manifested also in structures and politics and organizations, etc. So, but because it isn't manifested, it isn't easy to change, it will take time. But it is extremely important that we move towards an aliveness mindset where the planet Earth is actually a living system. And those of you who live in countries where there are still strong indigenous communities, you know that this is not a new mindset. It is a memory of an old mindset, and we need to really acknowledge that. And old is not a kind of a value statement. Old has something to do with wisdom. Yeah, so it is. We need to get this old mindset back and develop it into a new mindset that can then, in a positive way, influence the machine mindset. And that's part of my work, because I've developed, let's say, methodologies and concepts and theories, so that this merging of a machine mindset and coming together with an aliveness mindset, can actually be translated into practice, because that's the most important part. If we stay in theory, it's fantastic, but it probably doesn't work. One person that I would like to remind of is Joanna Macy. Some of you may know her. She's been writing wonderful books, also integrating the Buddhist view into a systems view. And she says that it's the people who love life that are going to change and are going to be at the forefront of transformation. So when we look at our common future, then the question is, how can we rearrange our global future in a way that we stop extracting life from the planet? Because at the moment we do that. The planet is still strong, humankind is still strong enough, but we keep extracting and we keep destroying. And if I say we, it's in a way are not right, because there may be certain people who do it much more than other people, and you probably also are aware of the total and utter imbalance between the industrialized nations and the not yet fully industrialized nations in terms of extraction. But as a mindset, it's really global. It feels as if it's possible and it's going to be okay, but there are more and more people who say, okay, it's not okay. The climate crisis discussions, transformation discussions, green economy, etc., and many new approaches that are emerging, that are giving evidence that there is a change in mindset that we can build on. So the paradigm shift is really about responsibility for a livable future. So also the responsibility for future generations. So it's, and everything else would be called naive. So we need to take a responsibility. It is definitely about transforming the global and local operating system. And that is a huge step. We need to go about our way of doing economy. And this is not the topic of today, but it's like, the overarching topic that we have to be dealing with. And the Club of Rome has just published a new book that is called Earth for All, which is also dealing with the issue and pushing people into really thinking about reinventing our economic system. So it's really about restoring, improving, maintaining our ecological and social life support systems. And it is definitely about repurposing our economies towards life enhancement. And interesting enough, just kind of a little detour. If you look back at the societies like 6,000 years ago, and some of these societies, I would say the majority, interesting enough, were matriarchies, or at least had some features of matriarchies. They had economies. If you look at the economic way of operating, apart from their embeddedness in nature, they had different purposes of economy that had to do with the common good, that had to do with the well-being of people. And it's quite interesting. I'm not saying we need to go back 6,000 years, but it would be really fantastic research also to look at what has been happening at that time so long back, and what are the elements that we could actually integrate into a new economic system. So if we look at the more rational side, remember the machine mindset has led to industrialization, has led to globalization, has led to science, to the modern science. But within the modern science, there are a lot of people who actually have had a different way of approaching things. I have done a lot of effort. You see at the bottom, you see a book that I've been writing and published in 2019. That's a more scientific approach in looking at these different scientists from very, very different disciplines, and what have they been doing, what have they been saying about what life essentially is, and what aliveness, the main feature of life, that life wants more life, life expands, life restores, life rehabilitates, etc. So there are lots of different people who've been doing fantastic work. And what was so interesting is that only some of them worked together, only some of them were connected, and others had nothing to do with each other. So probably Christopher Alexander, the architect, and Jane Jacobs is also an architect. Their writing, I have never found they connecting with each other. They probably knew each other, I don't know. But Margaret Whitley is very well known. Andreas Weber is a German semi-biologist with very fantastic work on enlivenment. And Joanna Macy, I mentioned already. Elizabeth Sahtouris and James Lovelock have been publishing quite a number of books together. And a different category again is Evelyn Fox Keller, who has more a feminist approach and has written fantastic books about the way of looking at the world and how it must be integrated into science. So these are very, very different perspectives, and it's really about one of our tasks is really bringing these different perspectives together. And I've been doing this in this book, which led to the patterns of aliveness theory. So this is more the scientific part. But apart from that, I've said, I've been in practice of multi-stakeholder collaboration for 25 years. And I always sought to connect, the theory with the practice, because I always believe a theory is as good as it can be implemented in practice. And the outcome of that mix of practical experience in successful collaboration and in looking at the theory and what people have said about what gives life to system, because that is the essential question, were actually 6 principles, that turned out to be, like that emerged actually from the literature. And if I quickly go through the different principles, then you can, if you're interested, I will also show an open access book where you can look at an article that is basically a shortcut article to the aliveness principles. But if I put the long story short, it's really one principle is generativity. So it's life always wants more life. Life wants to expand and, as I said, rehabilitate. And there is an urge. Andreas Weber has described this really fantastically. There is an intent in life to create more life and to expand and to become more versatile and more complex, etc. And the second element in life is that there's always containment. There are always systems and subsystems. So there's always some kind of boundary, but these boundaries need to be fluid enough. If they're too fluid, that system is going to break down. But if they're not fluid enough, it cannot be. There cannot be a good exchange between different systems. And it's Francesco Varela and Humberto Maturana who have been writing fantastic. The Santiago theory of cognition is a fantastic work that also shows, how systems emerge and how the structures of systems emerge. So that's the entire work, behind the idea of the principle of containment. Novelty is one of the principles that sounds kind of very familiar to us, because we know this in our human system with innovation. And the principle of consciousness, I had really big fights with some scientists, because some scientists says, but this is nonsense, Petra. This is not a life principle. It is this is something human. And I said, no, wait a minute. It's not only something human. We have because of our brain, of our really complex brain, we have a certain way of consciousness. We have developed it, into also the element of self-reflection. However, the part of consciousness is cognition, and again, Umberto Maturana and Francesco Varela, but also many other people have done a lot of work around this. So consciousness is really about the ability to see what I do and to see the effect what I do while I'm doing it. And interesting enough, plants have this, animals have this, trees have this, and also we as human beings have this. At this stage of our evolutionary development, one would probably say we don't have enough consciousness, because we need enough. We need a lot of measurements and a lot of talking and a lot of conferences, to help us develop into a consciousness that we could say is a global consciousness, is a kind of earth-centered, life-centered consciousness. So the interconnectedness is another life principle. Everything in life is connected. Everything, life is always contextual, and there are always networks. And if you look at the picture behind this picture, there's the forest, and the forest is the most fantastic example. With, I don't know if some of you know Suzanne Simard, the Canadian forest researcher, who has developed a huge body of practice-based theory about the communication networks of forests. It's really an enormous body of work. And wholeness is, life is always constructed in a way that it relates to the later, to the bigger whole, to other systems, etc. So these are basically the principles. As I said, if you're interested enough, I will show a book at the end of the slides where you can get more into depth. So the issue is we need to understand what gives life to systems. And that could be small systems like we as one person, our family, our cities, our villages, our our countries, our continents, it's like we really need to look at the different levels and what gives, if we understand what gives life to systems, we have a better chance to develop a life collaboration ecosystems, a life interaction systems that help us in the transformation that lies in front of us. So if we look at what systems vitality is, because a system vitality is the capability of a social or ecological system to actually maintain and review vitality and resilience in interaction with smaller and larger other systems. And now if somebody says, yeah, but there are people who buy big houses and big yachts, yeah, and then they feel alive. Yeah, but they do that by endangering the vitality of other systems. So systems vitality actually means that the aliveness of a system is done in a way that it's not endangering the vitality of other systems. So that is looking at systems vitality. Let's look at what are the patterns of a system, and how can this pattern approach in terms of systems aliveness help us in transformative change, and how can we use this? Because as I said, I come from theory, but then it's really about practice. So let's look at this. If we look at transformative change first, then it's really about systems leadership. And this means that system leaders are able to invigorate a system of actors that could be in a community, but that could be also a global alliance. So it's at all levels. To drive change together in a spirit of collective leadership, really in a spirit of complementary work, of collaboration, etc. And transformation literacy then is the versatility and the capability to actually apply methodologies. And there are many around in the world, and I'll show you some methodologies that enhance systems aliveness. So our approach from the collective leadership, of course, is based on our experience in many projects. It's really that once we're able to get the systems vitality in teams, in organizations and collaboration ecosystems, and that is hard work. That's a methodology. Once you get the systems vitality in, the chances for transformative change are much higher. And I will give some examples a little bit later. So transformative change, and we need to be clear about this, is really about large systems change. So it is about shifting into different patterns of action, different patterns of interaction across the board, sometimes across continents, sometimes in regions. And it is always a new way of thinking. So it is accompanied by wow, okay, this is a different way of doing things. And it requires that we find solutions collectively. So it is always connected to collaboration, to dialogue, to good communication. So this means going beyond our normal kind of institutional and silo approaches and moving towards innovative approaches. And those of you who have been looking closely at the social change elements in the last couple of years know that a lot has been emerging, like design thinking and innovation labs, etc. Yeah, so it is really on this novelty side of the system principles. A lot has been happening in the last I would say 10 years. So transformative change happens, or let's say we could also say becomes easier when systems become enlivened. If people are stuck in their silos, if people are stuck in their way of doing things, if people say, no, we can't, this is not an administrative procedure or doesn't fit, etc. Then, or if people are, let's say, depressed or unhopeful, that if people have the feeling, whatever I do doesn't really, it's not going to make difference, then the transformative change is much more difficult. So it's really, a transformative change really requires collaboration ecosystems, small collaboration ecosystems, but then these multiple forms of initiatives and collaboration ecosystems need to come together in partnerships, in multi-stakeholder partnerships, and in transformation networks. And I'm going to focus on these two elements a little bit later. So when we look at transformative change and look a little bit back towards the last 15, 20, I would say 15, 20 years, then we see we have had a lot of fragmented projects and initiatives, and sometimes that's even the case today. Like some people call it projectitis, so that is targeted, isolated action, and a lot of funding also is very targeted, because every project needs to have their own theory of change, and so then you shouldn't repeat what somebody else has been doing, etc. So there are a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of isolated silo mentality thinking still also in the project funding area, but there is hope for change. There are more and more, since about 10-15 years, more and more multi-stakeholder initiatives and partnerships, and probably today you've come across alliances on plastic in oceans, or kind of really alliances on implementing circular economy strategies, etc. So I think we've moved into a consciousness where multi-stakeholder initiatives are increasingly becoming the norm. I mean, I'm not saying it is already the norm, but at least, the goal number 17 on partnerships is very helpful for that. So this is really issue-based stakeholder collaboration that could be regional focused or focused on a certain topic, etc. And this is about multi-actor partnerships. But if we look a little bit ahead, and sometimes that's even happening today already, we look at multi-stakeholder transformation networks. So these are different partnerships, different multi-stakeholder initiatives that come together on a higher level, because they say in order to become effective, we cannot, even in the multi-stakeholder collaboration, we cannot work in isolation or in competition to other areas or to other initiatives in other areas or in other geographies. And so it's really about networks. These could be regional networks, etc., or global networks, but it's really about bringing the different initiatives and partnerships together in a larger system. Now, if you ask me how this is being reflected in funding, I think the funders are a little bit behind. They still love, people talk about transformation, but they are not really clear how complex systems of actors need to be coming together, and of funding ways of funding a certain organization, of course, is a little bit a barrier. But I do think that even in the funding area, there is a lot of a change in thinking. So that is very, very clear that networks are becoming part of the future. But these networks also need to have practical outcomes, and we will go there a little bit later. So when we look at this transformative change and look back to the principles, you can see it's the principles of generativity is really about mobilizing people into systems aliveness, if it's interaction systems. Containment is around who are we and what's the collaboration ecosystems. The novelty is about how do we bring innovation in. Consciousness about what do we see, what do we learn, and also what do we measure, because measurement actually is monitoring, is actually a way to learn. Interconnectedness is about how we connect with each other in terms of communication, and wholeness is always how do we relate to other initiatives and how do we relate to a goal that is a bigger goal. So how can multi-actor partnerships and networks benefit from the systems aliveness approach? Because what we've been doing in the Collective Leadership Institute, we've said, no, it's not about theory, it's really about practice. So it's really about now translating the approach, the aliveness approach, the vitality approach into practice. And we need to look first at something that is very important, because network action is what is the future. But there are different forms, and sometimes it really makes sense to look at the different forms and what they mean. So in terms of networks, we do have typical exchange networks, and that's probably how networks emerged. That could be practice, that could be research, but there are also quite a lot of advocacy networks. I don't know if you, for example, are familiar with the ecocide network, like introducing ecocide as a crime to humanity. That's a typical advocacy network. So it's really about influencing policies through the advocacy network. And on the other side, of this kind of balance, we have very concrete collaborative projects. We have maybe 2 or 3 organizations that come together and say, we're going to implement sustainable cocoa projects in Côte d'Ivoire, or whatever it is. And this is much tighter in terms of the collaboration setup. And so this is about partnerships. We also have multi-stakeholder initiatives where say, okay, there are now many more people involved. I don't know if you're familiar with the Global Coffee Platform. There are a huge number of institutions involved, between coffee buyers in Europe, with international NGOs, with so and so many producing countries, so and so many producers of coffee producers in Latin America, but also in Asia and in Africa. So it's a huge number of multi-stakeholders that come together and say, our task is sustainable coffee in the world, and we come together as a community. That's a typical multi-stakeholder initiative, but there are many, many more around. So it's all about collaborative transformation, but it's good to understand that these different approaches of networks of partnerships are slightly different, and the translation of the systems vitality approach into networks of partnerships is just slightly different. We need to understand that networks are much more about exchange and joint learning, and then each and every partner in the network implements their thing as they do, and then people come together maybe to coordinate certain actions, but basically the responsibility for implementation lies with the different organizations. And in partnerships and multi-stakeholder initiatives, there is much more joint implementation. So even multi-stakeholder initiatives do have joint projects, like the Cocoa or Sustainable Coffee Platform. They have joint projects, and projects and partnerships have much more strict implementation rules, because often they have contracts or whatever. So it's not a transactionary partnership. I give you money and you implement something, but it is a joint design of partnerships. So we really have these 2 elements of partnerships and networks, and both are valid, both are important, but it's just important to understand the difference. So let's look a little bit closer into partnerships. When we look at the aliveness or the vitality principles, then we can translate these principles into successful partnership development and successful partnership implementation. And there's of course more literature on that, but I'm just going through as looking at, like what are the elements that we translate. So regenerativity translates into co-designed strategy. Everybody needs to be on board. And containment is about who is doing what and what is the issue, who belongs to our collaboration ecosystem and how we actually implement things together. The novelty translates into innovation. So how do we bring in new developments? How do we learn as a multi-stakeholder partnership? Consciousness is really about looking at, do we really have a collective value for all partners and for what you usually call the beneficiaries or the target group. And the interconnectedness translates into the communication elements and the dialogic communication. Are we in a good dialogue constantly? And I'm not saying there are no hurdles or no conflicts in multi-stakeholder partnership. There are usually a lot, but if all these elements are in place, then it's quite interesting that hurdles can be overcome in a much better way. So the principle of wholeness translates into impact, into the contextual impact, because we cannot impact the entire world. So it's important to say what is our theory of change, and where do we contribute, and how do we collaborate with other initiatives in order to enhance the impact. So I would like to just give a brief example. And I'm using this example with these, I think quite a lot of men, and a lot of men in suits. So I'm using this example because there's so much there's so much around on very often digital partnerships around the world and digital networks, that I thought I'm looking at 2 examples that are really very practical. So this is about a multi-stakeholder collaboration ecosystem for an improved vocational education in Egypt. And as you can see, people are all coming from very traditional hierarchical institutions. And still, it's possible to bring the aliveness approach into this collaboration ecosystem. Maybe not at once, and maybe not with a lecture I give today. There are other ways of doing that. It's about training people, but it's also about experience, helping people to experience what it really means to collaborate successfully. And what is interesting, and I love this chart. You can't read it; it's probably too small, and part of it is in Arabic. But I love it because I wanted to choose an example that is in the real, machine mindset hierarchical world. And Egypt is very hierarchical. And if you want to bring about transformative change in a hierarchical world, then you need to be very, kind of very versatile with your approach. So what is so interesting is that the idea of improving the vocation training, vocational education in Egypt had a long story, and it failed and failed and failed because the government would train people, but the industry would actually not, kind of use these people, and unemployment didn't decrease. This is a long story. Of course, there are many more details to that. But what is so important is that now bringing the different actors step by step in small dialogues and small corporations together paved the way for invigorating and enlivening the system, because suddenly people who were working in hierarchies, and they're still working in hierarchies, but they could never look beyond their own kind of hierarchical area or their own terms of reference, etc. And bringing people together on different levels and still acknowledging the structure, acknowledging the hierarchy, acknowledging the responsibilities, opening people up to say, wow, we can actually do something better together. And that was a huge, interesting learning, that in the end, I was like, there were policies, there were new policies, there was a new way of collaboration, and it was brought down from the central level to the local levels, and it was brought back from the local level to the central level. So in a way, the process of multi-stakeholder collaboration enlivened the system and actually made the system of actors capable to address the problem in a totally and utterly different way. And still, if you go to Egypt, it's still like a hierarchy. So they're still working in their institutions, but these institutions now work together in a different way. So what is interesting is we worked a lot, with another model. We also have a dialogue to change model, and within these 4 steps of the transformative processes, you can now use the aliveness principles or the vitality principles, and they're translated in guides, and they're also translated into assessments. And sometimes people love assessments. And here it is just one example where at a certain stage in the beginning, it was only the core group, but the more people actually got into the methodology of transformative change and understood, oh yeah, we not only have to do something different, but we can do things differently, and we experience the success of collaboration, the success of dialogue, the success of developing joint strategies, etc. That these vitality principles are now translated not only in the guides but also in assessments, and you have the different elements: engagement management, network building, result orientation, etc. So that then people can come together and do their own assessments. And this is not about judging people. This is only about inviting people into a conversation, because the moment, you all know, transformative change is difficult, and there are always people who say, I know how it works. And that's probably right, and sometimes it's wrong. But if you have a methodology, then you can kind of talk about something that is a little bit more objectified. So you can talk about how this engagement management took place. In this case, goal criteria is absolutely high about engagement management. If that was part of the discussion, people would say, wow, okay, we know exactly where we want to go, but not everybody does. And so maybe we need to integrate people much more into the development of the goal, etc. So it provides a basis for a conversation that enables people to say, let's focus on 1 or 2 or 3, because nobody needs to be perfect. And these assessments are not about 6 out of 6 on all areas, but they are about, they're process oriented. And we will see an example of assessing within a process a little bit later. So this is really about a conversation that opens, that then enables people to say, what do we need to do about better engagement management? And what are the aspects we pick out for our process? So it's really about empowering people to look at the model, develop their own assessment, and develop their own strategies. And that's really fun. And it is an amazing fun to see that the outcomes were simply tangible in terms of a better policy, a better implementation, a better collaboration between industry and vocational training centers. So if we, this is about collaboration ecosystems, so where it's really about institutions, or partly, in this case, in the Egypt case, it was several levels of institutions, like a central and governorate level and local level. So this is really about collaboration ecosystems. If you look at networks, we can also translate the vitality principles into qualitative networks, networks that really have an impact. And very similar to the collaboration ecosystem, we can now translate the vitality principles into something tangible. And with networks, you remember, networks are have a slightly looser structure than partnerships and multi-stakeholder collaboration ecosystems. That's their character. So the questions might be similar, but they are a little bit different. So they are adjusted to the purpose and to the form of networks. So here it is about generativity, is about narratives. It's about, what are the purpose building narratives in the network? Containment is about structures. Do we have dynamic structures that allow us people to feel part of the network and be able to influence the network, and at the same time supportive enough for the different organizations? You remember that the organizations in networks usually implement their own thing, but connected to the networks. So what are the structures that enable that? And how do we bring novel pathways in? What is the way of bringing expertise in? And how does that value creation take place within the network? Because there are some sleeping networks, where you say over time, I'm part of this network, but nothing really is happening. So it is a constant renewal important to develop value creation for everybody. And networks definitely need a high level of dialogic exchange, so that people come together, exchange about experience, or exchange about new knowledge, exchange about strategies, expertise, etc., and then bring this back into their respective initiatives or respective institutions. And then it's really about, can the network create a contextual impact? And that is important, because if I'm a member of a network and I say, wow, as I said, example, ecocide advocacy network, we've really made a difference. We've achieved this, and we could only achieve this because we have so many people in so many different countries and so many institutions that we were able to influence certain policy decisions. This is just an example. So I will show you another kind of network, a transformation network, that I thought is also very, very interesting that we are involved in. And just like network of exchange are slightly different from transformation network, because transformation advocacy networks are going towards transformation networks, but transformation networks are really about, we want to see an impact of our network. We want the individual contributions of certain members to be coordinated in a way, although they might be different, that we see the change happening, the transformative change happening. And so it's different collaboration ecosystems or individual institutions that come together in a network. And this is really about shared purpose of a wider group. And this is an interesting project between different countries on the east side of Africa. And that's quite interesting because it is really about water. It's about the water, it is about ocean, and it's about the management of ocean. And so you can also look at the website. That's really, really interesting. So it's really about supporting these different African countries and bringing them together in the purpose of having an inclusive and sustainable, they call it a blue economy, kind of an ocean economy, so that there is no overfishing, that people are trained enough, that the policy instruments are aligned, etc. So it's creating, as you probably remember, containment. It's creating a containment, a system of these coast countries, that all have to do with fishing. I wonder if we have something in Europe like that. It would probably be very helpful in the Baltic Sea. But I thought this is a fascinating project. And now this, of course, is terribly complex. You can imagine, it goes back to certain conventions, etc. And it has, of course, a structure. This network has a structure between a steering team that comes from different countries, that all countries are represented, and within the countries different expertise. But it also, of course, has a task team of people who actually do the job of the coordinating of the network, and their innovation teams. And so it is, and they bring together the different projects, initiatives, and alliances that are, or also institutional actions that are already happening on the ground. But of course, it brings it to a higher level. So now the different policy people could exchange each other, but also the practical people, kind of the fisheries can exchange with each other. And the port management and the nature conversation on aquaculture and marine culture, etc. And they bring in circular economy topics. So the different topics go into different working groups, and that bringing that together enhances the implementation of a sustainable ocean economy in the different countries. So that is really quite interesting because it's very complex. Took a long time to set up, but it is a profiling. It's a visibility, and it is an impact that actually comes together from the different countries, from the different partners that are exchanging, and they are much more empowered to work in a different way. So if we look at the system vitality principles, then you look that they've done, it was in the beginning of the core group, they have done an assessment also around the system vitality principles, translated. And what is quite interesting is that was done a couple of months later. And then people could, because of the process, was a good and very structured process, they could see the changes. And some changes were positive, some changes were negative. So it was a good ground for a conversation, a very practical conversation about, wow, wait a minute, we have neglected member connectivity. So something needs to be done about this. So there are very concrete outcomes out of these assessments. So this is another example where the vitality principles get translated into something very tangible and with tangible outcomes. So when we look at the trajectories towards systems change, then probably the next step is really bringing these large networks together and have a huge, a system. If you look at energy change or at getting out of fossil fuels, well, many institutions, many actors actually have to come together, and then we are really into transformation systems, so that that is not part of today's today's masterclass, but that would be probably the next step. And sometimes it's already happening, that there is really a complementary aligned institutional action between multiple stakeholders on hugely complex issues that we are all dealing with. So, and then, of course, as you probably could imagine, you can also, for these transformation systems, use the aliveness principles, and they're then translated into narrative structures, innovation metrics, governance, and regulations. But that would be another lecture that I can give at some stage. So just kind of going back to the literature, the Green Book is a theory book. It's a scientific book, and the right transformation literacy too, but that is open access. So if you get the PowerPoint or keep the title in mind and Google it, you will find it as an open access book. The Blue Book is really a storybook about that also takes up the individual level of systems aliveness. And the book where you can see the collective leadership compass is a book that I wrote together with my colleagues. And this is really a practitioner guide, and it's also open access. So if you Google that, you will find that. So with that, I say thank you so much. I hope it was not too long, Marianne, but yeah, it's a complex issue and I enjoyed going through.
Thank you so much, Petra. It's of course very useful for us in acknowledging that you have decades of experience in working with this. And as I was hearing you, it came to my mind 30 years ago at the end of the Earth Summit, when there was so much talk about participatory processes for decision making. I think historically, really, the 92 Earth Summit was the time that this idea of multi-stakeholder participation was on the table at the policy level, at the UN level.
Absolutely.
So it's something to celebrate in the fact that it made through the policy, it made through the decision, that decisions should be made in a participatory manner, not only within the realm of governments. Yeah. However, there are many ways in which we can do that. I would like to ask you a specific question. After that, we are going to have a quick Q&A here, and we are going to go into breakout rooms. But what do you think are the 3 key skills, key characteristics we need for someone to be an effective systems leader? Like looking at, and I'm asking this because we have all our institutions, areas of knowledge, expertise, there are issues around institution silos, egos, funding, and sometimes collaboration and partnership is actually not so easy, although it's the whole idea, right? And actually it's should be the aspiration of everybody, but sometimes it doesn't happen for various reasons. So what do you think are the key skills and characteristics we need to find in a systems leader to be more effective in ensuring quality collaboration, partnership, multi-stakeholder partnership?
There are clearly 3 levels that we can talk about in terms of skills development. So the one is, we call it self-awareness. Okay, that's a long story, that's an old story, but the self-awareness, what is important is to understand our strengths, and we always build on the strengths and our limitations. And this is not just classical leadership development in terms of, we all need to be good at everything. No, our approach is, no, please, let's work complementary. And so if I'm not good in relationship management, but I'm really good in innovation, let me get Marianne to work together with me. I'm just making up this example. Yeah. So just looking at us in our potentials and our capabilities, but also our limitations, without kind of thinking we need to be good in everything. We need to see what the strengths are of other people and say, wait a minute, I don't have to fight with Marianne because I think innovation is the most important and Marianne thinks engagement is the most important. No, I can work together. Yeah, so that's one. So number 2 is to understand systems. and really make ourselves knowledgeable about the complexity of systems without being afraid of complexity, because life is complex. Yeah, nature is complex. So we're looking at the complexity and understanding these patterns of the systems, because sometimes systems can't change because they can't change, because they do have certain structures in place, and you need to understand the structures. And that's done by talking to people, that's done by research, that's done by stakeholder analysis. That, never try to change the system without understanding, what makes the system run the way it is, or what the aspirations of people are. And the third is definitely the process competence. And there's a lot of around like art of hosting and design thinking, as I said, various methodologies from world cafes to anything else. But I always say, don't only look at one facilitation skill, look at process, because it's really about understanding how in a structured way to set up processes that gain trust and help people to gain trust with each other, because in multi-stakeholder collaboration there is no trust and you can't demand it. People need to experience that a little bit of trust leads to a little bit more trust and a little bit, it's the actual joint action that enhances the trust, plus of course good communication, etc. So the third skill is definitely looking at the process competence of creating structured processes in multi-stakeholder collaboration.
Good. It's good to keep in mind thinking about what are those skills that we constantly need to nurture in ourselves to be able to build bridges with different actors. And as I was hearing you, of course, in my world here, I've been thinking a lot about changing universities. Imagine, it's not easy. Thinking about reorienting education towards sustainability. And you just said, well, we need to be mindful and acknowledge the different actors that are inside that system of a university, and how important it is to listen, to acknowledge, to bring in the different actors and be able to listen. Anyone else? Anyone would like to jump in? I would like to maybe invite Alide to come in. Alide has been in Holland, but very much involved in multi-stakeholder processes, in these linkages between government and civil society, to make a comment or a question. But before that, I want to say, so in the Earth Charter, from the outset, there is an emphasis there on the need to, or the recognition on the importance of partnerships, building partnerships specifically among governments, civil society, and business. We understand that this is essential for good and effective governance. But I can see that over the last 30 years that a lot of things are moving ahead if we compare it with 50 years ago, but we certainly need to press the accelerator in making it happen in a much faster and more effective way. Alide, in Holland, you have tried to do a lot of these, right? These linkages across collaborative efforts. Do you have any comment or question to Petra from your context?
Thank you. Thank you, Petra. That was really very nice. It was quick and a lot of information, so I'm still grasping it. Thank you. It's really interesting. Yes, of course, then listening, many examples came to my mind. And I think a very powerful agenda that has this potential of linking different systems so that it can have more impact is, of course, I thought I saw your icons there, the SDGs, the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals. I was wondering, because I could say things about experiences I have, but the question is always, of course, the Netherlands is a small country, so the weakness is that it's small, but then it uses it sometimes as a strength to be diplomatic in some cases, it has lost this position over the years, I think. But are you involved in one way or another with the UN Summit for the Future, where our common agenda beyond 2030 is going to be discussed? And could the Earth Charter perhaps be, because I remember when the Earth Charter was launched, it was in the year 2000, then also the MDGs were launched in the same year by Kofi Annan. And then from Earth Charter International perspective, we tried to expand the MDGs because it was more donor developing countries relationship instead of an equal relationship. And it wasn't looking internal in countries' policies and practices. Then, of course, we were all happy from the Earth Charter perspective that the MDGs became the SDGs, more holistic agenda. But then we still have the Earth Charter there, that is more the ethical, reflective compass that we can use to implement these concrete goals. Do you think that is a powerful combination to use for our common agenda beyond 2030?
Yeah, I'm not involved. If there was an opportunity, I would definitely say yes. I do think I haven't talked to Miriam about it, but yeah, I do think the original idea of the Earth Charter was to make it an agreement, and then it became, and then it became a voluntary declaration. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I do think the Earth Charter is such a powerful statement on this aliveness mindset. Yeah? So, and the mindset of seeing the Earth, the planet as a living system, that one could say the time is ripe to bring it back. And I would say, because I'm saying this because the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it's fantastic that they are called SDGs and they are applied to all. And I know even in Germany, in the countryside, sometimes people refer to them, so it has definitely fulfilled its purpose. In terms of identification. There are companies like Danone and other companies who organize their strategy around the SDGs. So fantastic. But the SDGs are a translation of, let's say, they are also a translation of an aliveness approach, but very covered into a machine mindset, it's a silo approach, and I don't want to criticize this because it served its purpose, we need to acknowledge that. But I do think, and in the Earth Charter, of course, is much more a holistic underlying paradigm approach. And I do think it's time to bring the paradigm approach now into the more mechanistic approach of the SDGs. Don't get me wrong if I say the SDGs are mechanistic. Of course, everybody knows they're interconnected, etc. And many people talk about a systemic approach, etc. But it's not yet a spirited approach. And I'm not talking about spirituality, but I'm talking about spirited. Like acknowledging living systems and the planet as a living system. So I would say it would be a fantastic move to bring these two elements together, because I do think the time is ripe. Because if you look back the last 20 years, I think the consciousness has been changing, not for everybody, not everywhere, we know that. But it's so, where 20 years ago, these were kind of idealistic. It was an idealistic community, that managed, which is fantastic, to get the Earth Charter together and out there. But it was not enough for people to say, okay, that needs to be part of our policy development. It needs to be part of our government responsibilities, etc. So I do think it's time to bring it back together.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ali, this question made me think about collaboration and partnership with future generations. Which is, I don't know exactly how to do that, but certainly with the younger generation is key. Okay, we are going to go into maybe a 8-minute breakout room so that you have time to share with someone about what you heard, about this notion of systems literacy and the importance of collaborative and collective leadership. We all, in our own context, have been involved in a way or another in building partnerships or collaboration, and we know sometimes the challenges for that. So I hope some of the key elements that Petra just shared with us can spark some new ideas into you, and I invite you, encourage you to share in your room. So we'll see each other back here in 8 minutes. Okay, let's go to breakout rooms. You can click in the button that I hope you can see on your screen to join. Let me see here. Valeria. We are going to come back to the big group. So that Songli is still here. I know some people in Asia had to leave given the time, and it's late. By the way, we're very happy that we have a big group from a university in China that's working with us since January. We have a group of 300 people doing different courses of ours. Okay, so here we are. I think we are all back. Welcome. Thank you so much. It's good to see your faces. I suppose you had a good chat. And I would like to hear from you any thoughts you might have had in your chat or insights from the presentation from Petra. I think Vaverly was together with Sarah in a conversation. Michael.
Yes.
So it was Brasilia. Sarah and who? And Alid.
Alid.
Brazil, Costa Rica, and Holland together in a call. Good.
we were sad that when it closed the conversation we were talking about and dreaming.
Good. Wonderful. And then Michael Bracken from Florida was having a conversation with Annie from Norway. So we would like, let me encourage you to take the floor. Maybe the first group that I just mentioned, if any one of you, Vaverly or Sarah, would like to share. And I'm particularly interested to hear from you your challenges in terms of collaborative, establishing a collaboration or partnership that is enduring with different stakeholders, and your takeaways from what we just heard from Petra. So the first group, Vaverly, Sarah, or
Oh, it was really a wonderful conversation, and it was highlighted by the enthusiasm of Sarah sharing with us her project. And I hope we had more time to change more ideas, because it seems a very productive environment. And as they are in Costa Rica and so near Earthshatter, and Sarah was so inspired by Petra's words. I think it was really, really a beautiful meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, Petra. I was sharing that your presentation was really inspirational for me, for the project I'm leaving. I was sharing that we are living in Costa Rica. We left our house in Italy and all our life there to come here to co-create a new community. And I'm leading with my husband, with other persons here, the project and the specification with the educational project. And for us, the educational project is connected with the community life, because we are finding in our lives to be coherent with our visions and our daily life. So what we are feeling here now, that is the present moment, is the moment for the action. It's like the slogan of Earthshatter, bringing action from consciousness to action. And we are inspired on this, and we are co-creating this seed, this new model of living in a community and being coherent with the transformational mindset. And we are also feeling that our children are guiding us to this, the new generations. And I have 3 children, and I also have one other in the belly. So we are feeling all this, and these new children are like guiding us to really to think there is possible the change, and it's the moment, it is the present moment, is now. And we are feeling in Costa Rica especially is a very incredible environment. We are in the forest. Yeah, there is the forest and the river, and the nature is guiding us, and we are super connected with the Earth Charter. We love Miriam and the love and the project and Alicia, and we are also bringing all this vision into the reality of our community. And this is a seed project, and we are going to expand this project all over the world. So we want really to do it, and we need you. We need you all with all this.
And I know that the eco-village community is going through this process of building a shared vision. That's why Petra talked about shared vision, bringing different actors together to co-create and collaborate. And of course, Petra talks from her experience and her knowledge, but I know that's exactly the process that the eco-village is undergoing. Okay, so I know it was useful. So Michael Bracken and Hanne Lund from Norway, would you like to offer any comment or question to Petra and something that emerged out of your conversation?
Hanne, why don't you go first?
Okay. I'm very happy to tell you that the Earth Charter Norway is now being giving a new chance. So just a few weeks ago, I entered the board on the association, and we are trying to give a new life to the movement here in Norway. So I really appreciated the good thoughts and values, Petra, about networks and partnership, and how can we do this? How can we make Earth Charter alive? And also thank you to Alid, who gave me, actually you gave me Halvor's name. So we are now reconnecting with the old boys that founded the Earth Charter of Norway. So I'm now joining 3 old men and the board on and giving everything a new chance. I'm very thrilled about this. So thank you for these ideas about networking and being alive.
Collaboration. And I know that in Norway, I know the process for the last 15 years, it has been a challenge, right? To establish long-term collaboration among different stakeholders in this particular field. So that's why I think it's so important, the insights that Petra just shared with us, to see how we can, even for the whole Earth Charter movement, or for your case specifically in Norway, how can we take some of these key elements that Petra has already identified to be more effective in our own different contexts of generating shared vision. So I hope some of these good seeds that we heard today will get into fertile soil there in Norway.
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah, I just want to add, and I think it's important for everyone to know that Hanne mentioned that one of the things that motivated her most was she took the certificate course last year for educators. And the level of instruction, the content really inspired her to have the confidence to seek out the Norway Earth Charter affiliate. And also she's taken on a new role in her work where she's working with children in kindergarten who go to school in the forest. And she's reaching out also beyond her key role in working with educators. So we're really proud of everything that she's doing, and it's very collaborative. I just want to add another topic of our conversation was it was really coming from my end. I've been to Oslo. She lives just south of there. and have been a fan of the social safety net that's a part of, which is a very collaborative, transformative system that's in place in Scandinavia and the Netherlands and several other countries, and how it differs with the US where I live, and how if there's some way we can transform minds and consciousness from taking at least part of the Norway system and converting it to our society, which would hopefully lead to a higher level of care, more social and economic justice, and really being more serious about following all of the principles of the Earth Charter. But there's a lot we can learn from Hannah and people in Norway and Sweden and all those countries about just the basic kindness and compassion for everybody that's within the confines of a country.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to hear you. I'm going to call on the group with two Valeries, Valerie Ellis and Valeria and Edward and Amanda. And before that, Petra, there is something that is intriguing in my head. Is you talked about collaboration and partnership, and it seemed that you made a difference there. Can you elaborate on this a bit before we call on the group?
Okay, collaboration is a term. Some people say cooperation. You know, but I think collaboration has been becoming the major term. You know, for collaboration as a term is of course a much broader term. So collaboration can have between two people or between, I don't know, a couple of thousand. Yeah. So collaboration is a way to a certain process term, a way to work together, a way to communicate together, a way to co-create together. So that is all under the term collaboration. And the examples that I mentioned, because of course there could be other examples, you know, are on partnerships on the one hand and networks on the other hand, because the form of collaboration is different. They both collaborate, but the partnerships, of course, have a much structured collaboration. So it means like usually they have a goal, they have a joint goal, they have a project plan, they have some kind of roadmap. They have an allocation of roles and responsibilities, etc. You know, like this is much more, sometimes even much more formal. So, and even if it's a multi-stakeholder partnership, for example, you know, this Collective Leadership Institute was involved into a partnership between two countries, Bangladesh and India, on shrimp farming. You know, like it's also complex, but it is a partnership because they signed a memorandum of understanding to do X, Y, Z, etc. While if you collaborate in networks, it's much more an collaboration of inspiring and supporting each other's action, but you don't necessarily need a memorandum of understanding between, you know, kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 partners. Huh? And it's just important to be alert to the difference, because depending on what we want to do, we can go more in this direction or more in the other direction, but both is a collaborative approach.
Good. Yeah, thank you so much for this clarification. So collaboration, we could see something like this, and partnership is very specific with a plan, specific expectations, etc. Thank you. Good. The group with Valerie Ellis, Valerie Gerritsen, Eduardo, Amanda. Anyone would like to jump in and share your insights from the presentation and your conversation?
Well, I was excited to see that there are connections in terms of Florida. You know, that was really interesting to meet some new people that are engaged with the Earth Charter in Florida. So, but I unfortunately missed a lot of this. Something else came up and I couldn't join in the beginning. So I was really excited to hear what people's comments were, especially, you know, what Eduardo said about, you know, this big gap between political situations that emerge and the work that we try to do. You know, Florida has a lot of that going on right now too. But we also have a network of people that are working together. So
Thank you. Anyone else from that group?
Yes, if Valerie wants to found like a group in Florida, close to Fort Lauderdale, I would also put my network in, because I was working in social cultural projects for many years in Miami area, so it's super close, and this would be very cool to connect, because I already presented the Earth Charter to my colleagues there, but there was like no roots, you know, like, so maybe we found some roots now with Valerie.
Exciting.
But
Yes.
Valeria Gerritsen, where are you based?
In Warburg, in the Earth Charter city.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were in Germany. That's why I was...
Yes. But I was working within the arts and on like with projects that have like a social cultural context, like we in Florida.
I see. Okay.
I was also sharing that we are right now building a relationship between Warburg and another group in Indonesia. And I just came back from the Netherlands. The artist group, the collective, is exhibiting at Van Abbe Museum. So just yesterday we said that we are going to do our collaboration, and now I'm like very happy, and the Warburg people don't know yet. So I'm going to present, and it will be amazing. So Petra, it was very nice to learn, and I'm like, okay, how can I now put all this theory into action? Because one thing also that you said, like the complexity of like what is all behind, like that funding systems don't understand the complexity of relationships, like one-on-one conversations, like the enthusiasm and the love that it needs, like to build those relationships and networks and collaborations that are not like also becoming partnerships, like with a plan and with a goal. And I mean, I also say like those who want peace have to prepare as good as those who want war. So I'm like in Warburg, like when we collaborate with companies and stuff, it's like I try to really lay out a plan, because that's their way of thinking, so they can jump in and feel secure. The collaborative way is sometimes too much, like too far away, like.
Somehow it comes to my mind that all of us in different contexts, in areas, we all need collaboration and we want to collaborate, but we not necessarily know how to collaborate. So I feel we need this more and more this kind of exchange, or almost of like guide for how to be more effective in collaboration. There was another group with Song Lee and Vera, and I just want to acknowledge here that Song Lee worked for many years in the World Bank in trying to work with collaboration in the Middle East. And now he's certainly looking at this China and outside the world China collaboration. So Song Lee, any insights you had from this wonderful presentation we had from Petra?
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, it's a really great talk. And what is special for me is that she focuses also on how, and she focuses on tangible results, and she focuses on impacts. Those are the difficult things, and you know, that is essential for me, who had experience with the big bureaucracies. And I just joked with Vera, and Petra's major clients should be the Secretary General of UN, should be the head of agencies of UN agencies, should be the World Bank. And because Vera also, you know, we discussed about it, and to say, you know, we are outsiders for a number of big systems, and how we could trigger the change, because the bureaucracy, they are not ready to change. I said, this is Miriam is doing, is leading, is that Earth Charter, well, you know, a kind of awake people's consciousness well, motivate people by hearts. So the members of the bureaucracy could trigger the change. And also the young people, they are thinking about their future. They are thinking about their kids. Those, they have the interest, really, to bring change before it's too late for our home. Anyway, congratulations, Petra. And I learned a lot. And also, I think what you are doing is that besides the system thinking, besides the consciousness, you have arms, in countries like Egypt, like Western Africa, and you help them taking action. You help them improve actions they are taking in order to change the consciousness and also the outcome and results. Really good job. Thank you. But Vera, I know Vera has some ideas, and maybe you can just bring yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sung-Lee, and also Petra for your input. So maybe just one little comment to connect to that, because we were thinking about systems which are very bureaucratic, which doesn't really want to change, or where people are in the leadership who doesn't want to change. So this is something I also experienced in my work, which is really difficult how to tackle. So I really liked the structure, also what Sung-Lee already said, that it shows tangible result and the assessments. But maybe you also have some more comments on that. How you experience this, because I guess if you're in the development cooperation, you also sometimes experience that you have projects where maybe you have partners which are not so eager to change and do things differently. So maybe you can share some of your experience, how you go about this. Thank you very much.
Great, Vera, thank you. Petra, can you hold these comments in question, and let's hear to the last one, because after that we have to go. So there's a group with a Yutsuha, in Pexim, Camila, Rocio, maybe we never heard from you. I don't know if you can.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Actually, in the breakout room, we talked, we introduced each other because we don't know each other. That was a start. Actually, we introduced each other and get to know each other. I think that was the very important things, to know what we are interested in, why we joined this masterclass. And actually, we found out that we have the same passion for education, and it's important to learn about our charter and the systems leaderships. So this is I think no matter where we are, I'm in Japan right now, but we are in different countries. We can connect online, even though it's online. I think this is a great opportunity to get to know and then get to meet people, which we all are stakeholders. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear. Anyone else from her group? And we move to Petra. Yes, Rocio.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rocio Collantes from Panama. Thank you so much, Petra, for your introduction about this. I love it, the passion about the education. I had a conversation with my friends from Japan. It's amazing about discuss why it's very important to practice the Earth Charter with a relationship of the peace, or the save the Earth planet, But I love it. Well, also have a happy emotion to listen about this. I want to continue put the practice this relationship with the next generation. So thank you, my friends from Japan. Say me your opinions about about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucia. Acknowledging that it's midnight in Japan or beyond. So thank you for the two of you who are here from Japan. Thank you so much. Okay, Petra, any last comment on what you heard in the session today?
Yeah, it's wonderful to see the different people from different countries and the passion. And I also love the idea, and Miriam, we need to talk about it to connect this more with a network, Earth Charter as an impact network or transformation network. So I also had quite a lot of thoughts. I just wanted to say that there was a question about the practicability of the approach when in a context where people actually block change or, you know, kind of solid silo mentality institutions, etc. And I think the recipe is very simple. And we as a collective leadership institute, you probably don't find as in too many of international conferences, you find us out in the field, yeah, because we're doing the actual work with people that usually doesn't get into the press and doesn't get into I don't know what. So, but what is fascinating is always that of course you would never go into a system like just two examples: Tunisia, a small NGO, they wanted to change their city. Ukraine, a situation that was before the war, where they wanted to improve the health system and bring the different actors together. It's both situations where collaboration is going to be very difficult because the NGO in Tunisia, in a southern Tunisian city, the municipality administration didn't want to work together with the NGO and the different actors. Yeah, and the different actors in Ukraine in health system. Sorry, you know, but we all do our silo thing. Yeah, and what I mean, just these two examples. What needs to be done is always kind of listening. You know, talking in phase one, always talking to as many actors as possible, and of course you need to be mandated. Yeah, so in Tunisia, it was a project that we got from the foreign ministry. So we were the main actor, you know, going there and listening, you know, kind of basically listening. And the administration had made good experience with us in a water forum project. So that was good, you know, kind of good reputation. Yeah, so that helped. In Ukraine, nobody knew us, and that was through a development corporation. But they were extremely skeptical because there's so many donors around and everybody wants something different and everybody trains everybody, and you know how it is. And so it usually takes a long phase one, and you need to find a theory of change that gets funded, although you don't know what you're going to do. You know, I'm just being very blunt. Yeah, so you need to set up a project that looks totally and utterly logic and has a huge impact, and yet at the same time you need to have an open phase one and need to kind of align this a little bit. So it is about a lot of talking about it, a lot of context analysis, and finding where's the energy. When do people wake up? You know, when is the conversation an inspiring conversation? This is the key issue. And you can have the most inspiring conversations in the most solid institutional hierarchical structures. They are always passionate people. That's my experience. You know, like they sometimes are frustrated, you know, but then once you get them into a conversation of possibilities, so it is really about conversations around possibilities, and sometimes that needs to be preceded by conversations that are complaint conversations. You know, this, you know, if people tell you what doesn't work, yeah. So and then you can only shift. So and then it is about thinking about who's the first collaboration system, small system, bring them together. Kind of get them, you know, like the breakout groups today. You know, you suddenly see things differently because you talk to people you never talk to. Yeah, and you can and always talk about the issue. Never talk about systems leadership or transformation literacy. Talk about the issue. Yeah, health or city development or whatever. Yeah. So and then we usually work, if we have the funding. We work with getting people into a training course on collaborative change. So, and then everyone wants to have a training course in collaborative change because, yeah, so it's fine. And then we usually start not with the most complicated models that I've showed you today, but we start with a very simple thing. What do I do in phase one? What do I do in phase two? You know, like, and that usually resonates with people because they can see where collaboration failed in the past. And then, you know, and only once you have people in a in a spirit of possibilities, it's still not, like huge, big change, but a spirit of possibilities, then you can build on this and slowly talk about visions, talk about, kind of that you all know, kind of alignment of visions, and then develop a strategy plan and do the next step, etc. And then help people to experience that collaboration works, because that first experience of a working collaboration builds the next level of collaboration, and they'll kind of really build it step by step. It's a long story short, and I can just say, collaboration isn't easy, but and we tend to excuse other people that they're not collaborative if it doesn't work, but there is a way to do it, and there is also a way of overcoming the frustration that goes hand in hand with collaboration.
Thank you so much, Petra, for sharing with us your vast experience and knowledge. I deeply appreciate, and I'm grateful. By the way, all of you, Petra has a website that is better than a library. Just go to Petra's website.
You mean the collective?
No, it's your website. I mean, collective. I mean, petrakuenkel.com website is better than any library you can find. It has articles and I mean, of course, the collective leadership too, but I'm basically focusing on the vast work and articles and talks and books that Petra has, and a lot of this can be found in Petra's website, and I strongly encourage you to go as well as to the collective leadership website. So in closing, go ahead, please.
Miriam, I just put in the chat a German book because I didn't realize that there would be Germans on the on the masterclass. Yeah, just for you to acknowledge that there is also a book in German that has just come out that is a bit of a more rational-minded summary of the entire approach that has just been published by Springer. So those of you who may be able to have access, or if you contact me through Miriam, then I think I can also make give you a friend's copy, an electronic version. That would also be possible.
Okay. Thank you so much, Petra, and thank you for being with us today and really offering the vast knowledge you have in a glimpse. So in closing, I just want to tell you a story. When the Earth Summit took over, was over, 1992, as you know, I worked with Morris Strong, and his first passion was the summit is not over. So there was unfinished business of Rio 92. And in his mind was two things. One was the Earth Charter that I continued to work since then, but it was the National Councils for Sustainable Development, which was chapter 38 of Agenda 21, talked about mechanisms, multi-stakeholder mechanisms of participation and decision-making. So I really followed for about 10 years after the Earth Summit, that process of galvanizing NC, National Council for Sustainable Development, and CSD around the world. And NCDO in Holland was one of the many examples that emerged as a result of the Earth Summit. Unfortunately, I didn't see, I mean, the Earth Council didn't have the funding to continue to do that. I was following that from very close here. It was very strong in the decade of the 90s. The main point was about strengthening multi-stakeholders mechanisms to develop policies and implement policies around sustainability. And the best example that continued to exist, I guess, for the past 2 decades that I found, that I know of, is Mexico. And the reason is why they have survived over decades is because UNDP and the government of Mexico offered financial support and institutional support to ensure different actors all over Mexico in different sectors continue in that process. So anyway, I have to celebrate that Brazil in last week. They have resuscitated what the equivalent of that in Brazil is called CONAMA, the National Council for Environment, with a sort of a multi-stakeholder body to look at environment and sustainability policies and see how it's implemented and developed. So with all of that, I hope we will continue to delve and dig in the knowledge we heard from Petra today on the importance of, say, systems view and collaborative partnership and how we can develop that, because it's not so easy. So I think the Collective Leadership Institute has a lot of experience and insights based on the model that Petra has developed. Thank you so much. At the end of June, we have our next masterclass with Michael School from Holland, who is actually needs a lot of knowledge on system change, because he's certainly leading a systemic change in Holland on regarding the true price. Anyway, thank you everyone and take care. All the best and see you soon.